Hey, and welcome to the IEMEDIA podcast. This is episode 20. If you're looking for episode 19, you'll have to visit my Linktree and click on the Uncensored tab, as that was with my former friend Popeye from Down the Rabbit Hole Radio, who I used to co-host with back in the day. We did get into some sensitive topics, which may be too sensitive for YouTube. Like I say, head over to my Linktree, click Uncensored, and you'll find the last episode. So today I'm joined by Ian Murray. He's a US Army Reservist Staff Sergeant, and he was also a former corrections officer who was falsely accused and arrested, and he's trying to get the story out there and trying to get some justice and shed light on what actually happened. So I'm looking forward to getting into Ian's story today. I did watch a little bit of the podcast you was on previously with Matthew Cox, Inside True Crime, 179,000 views, I think, or more now. Yeah, really, really good. I've been watching him for a while, so when you requested to be on the show, and then I realised you was on here, so I was like, oh wow, this is awesome.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
So first of all, I want to say thank you for requesting to come onto the show, and sorry to hear that, what's happened to you over the last decade or so.
Thank you.
Before we get into your story, Ian, I would like to get a little bit of an insight into your life and what led up to your military career, and more importantly, working in the corrections. How did it all start for you, and where did it begin?
Well, I grew up in Northeast Florida. I'd always had a fascination with the military. My grandfather was a World War II veteran, U.S. Army. After I graduated high school, I went to traditional college. Wasn't really my cup of tea, so I ended up joining the Air Force Reserves and went into security forces, which is their equivalency of military police. And after applying to numerous different departments up where I was stationed in Charleston, South Carolina, I was offered a job with the Charleston County Sheriff's Office in their corrections system. I worked for them for several years, left that area to pursue some other career opportunities. And then a few years after that, I think it was around 2009, I was offered a job down in Jacksonville, where I was originally from, with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. I was a little reluctant, to be honest, to go back into corrections, but after seeing the jail and talking to some people, I decided to give it a shot. They had a great benefits program, so I figured it'd be worth the move. So I moved from South Carolina back to Florida. Started working with them, was in the Army National Guard at this time. I'd switched from the Air Force to the Army. And they were fully aware of that when they hired me, that I'd already been in the reserve and guard components. Unfortunately, from the very get-go, almost, there seemed to be a problem with some of the leadership at the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, and me being in the military. There was always just a disdain from some of my supervisors. They didn't like the fact that I was allowed to take time off, that I was getting another paycheck for doing my extra job. And it just, whenever we had to take action against this, it always seemed to get resolved. But this last case, where I was falsely arrested by my own department at the basis of a false complaint, it just completely blew my mind. I never in a million years thought something like this could happen. All I wanted to do was come to work, earn my living, and move on with my life. And I guess that was just too much for certain people, unfortunately.
Yeah. And you have served your country more than most people, so to be treated like that is really unjust, isn't it? And the shame of it, and coming to your home and arresting you. I think it was in the middle of the daytime and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they came to my house outside of their jurisdiction. And actually, came into my garage and arrested me, and out in public in front, and I thought it was a joke when the whole thing happened. I thought it was some of my friends at work playing a prank on me, because they knew I had been under investigation. I thought the whole thing had been completed, because I hadn't heard anything in a long time. But when they took me down to the jail, or not to the jail, to their substation, and I actually saw the dockets with my name on it, I was like, oh wow, this is real. And
wow.
They started asking me all these questions, and like where I was on this day. And my response was, well, what did my orders say? And you could just see that the pale looks on their face, that, they didn't even take that basic step of going to the same, it was in the same building where they worked. Not even going to the office to get my records of where my orders were, and that would have put this whole thing to bed in 5 minutes. And it's really sad that these detectives who are supposedly college educated, experienced police officers couldn't even do that much for an investigation.
I mean, I would question: was it some kind of vendetta? You think maybe from
It
higher up the
it might
chain?
have it might very well have been. I mean, part of me believes that they did this on purpose to try and just one, maybe to make a name for themselves. A lot of these integrity detectives, if you want to call them that, because there was no integrity here.
Yeah.
Um, they a lot of them were either police officers trying to get up the ladder in the detective ranks, or some of them were from high up on the detective ranks that had been demoted. I found out. So I think
Okay.
that they were just looking to put a little bronze star on their chart, so to speak, trying to make themselves look good, and they were willing to use me to sacrifice my entire livelihood to do that, which is sad. So
Yeah.
yeah, there is a part of me that believes that this was not just due to a simple error or neglect or dereliction on their part. I part of me does believe that may be the case.
So, what was their reasoning for the charges initially?
Well, their argument was that supposedly all they looked at was my calendar for my drill schedule, and they never looked at my other orders, because when you're in the reserves, I was transitioning from the guard to the reserves as well, and I had to take some time off to go through the it's called MEPS. It's a military, like when you process from one branch to another, or when you process in the military, you have to take time to go get a physical done and a bunch of other things done. I had to take time off for that, which the orders again were on file. I had to present them to get the time off. There was also an instance where this lieutenant who filed this false complaint against me, she ordered me to take one of my military leaves and replace it with a personal leave day, because it was a day where I was on orders, but I didn't actually have to report in, which again is a common thing. I
Yeah.
even sought guidance on that from my military command as well as people within the sheriff's office. And they said, yeah, if your lieutenant's ordering you to do that, there's no rule against it. You're not doing anything wrong. You should do it, because she'll likely write you up for insubordination if you don't. So I complied with her request. And then that same day, she denied the request she told me to make. And I found out about a week later through my military unit that she'd filed the felonious complaint against me because they were calling my military unit to investigate.
Oh.
So yeah, it's just the whole thing just really stunk from the get go. It's really sad. This all started with one person who had a disinterest in me, and it blew up into this.
Yeah, and I think they were trying to say that you falsified documents, and the time that you said you was, serving for the military stuff, you was actually
Yeah,
on holiday.
the charges were official misconduct, that on the basis that I'd lied on your leave request, which was impossible to do because you can't take military leave without presenting documentation. That had never been granted. Even if I went to my supervisor and told them ahead of time, said, "Hey, I'm going to be getting orders," they would not approve that leave until I actually handed them physical documentation. So every one of my military leave days was documented,
Yeah.
usually weeks in advance, sometimes even longer than that. The drill calendars I put in for the whole year. So they knew
Mm.
well in advance when I was going to be taking off. But like I said, this lieutenant just, from what I understand, we found out through the course of our investigation, my lawyers and I, that she'd been plotting this for a very long time. After they started interviewing some of my coworkers, like she'd been setting this up for a while. I don't know why she did this to me. I never had any real interactions with her other than just my official duties at work.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, she did, she was a very unhappy person because she'd done similar things to other people I worked with, not to this level, but filed
Mm.
felonious complaints and, just to try and make people's lives miserable for whatever reason. And it's a shame because we already had a hard enough job as it was.
Yeah, I can
But
imagine.
yeah,
Is
I
she
just
is
couldn't
sh
believe it.
is she still in the job?
I don't think so. I believe she retired.
Yeah, for the best.
Yeah, well, yeah, she
Yeah.
started doing a lot of this when she became eligible for retirement because she knew then like they couldn't come back at her for anything and fire her. So yeah, just very
Right.
vindictive, two-faced. I don't even know what she was being vindictive over me for. I honestly
Mm.
just don't understand why she had to do this to me and some of my colleagues. It was just really unfortunate. Being a corrections officer is one of the hardest jobs in the world, and it's like
Yeah.
you don't expect this kind of treatment from people, your leadership, who are supposed to be looking out for you and have your best interests at heart.
Yeah.
I was more. That's the bad thing. It's like being working there, I never was worried about the inmates. It's like I was more worried about the people I had to work with and for.
Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, how did that feel to be arrested? Suddenly, well, first of all, you're a corrections officer, so you're on the other side of the bars,
Mhm.
and then next minute were you took to like a county jail or something for a
Yeah,
short period?
they took me after they were done interviewing me, even after I told them it's I think what happened was I think they realized they made a mistake, but the problem was as soon as they put the cuffs on me, someone went to the media and because before I even got to the jail, they'd ran the story on the 5 o'clock news and the 6 o'clock
Wow.
news. So I think there was part of them that realized they'd made a mistake, but at that point they knew there was no turning back
Yeah.
and they were going to have to follow through with this. But yeah, they took me to the jail I'd actually worked at. I was actually booked in by one of my former sergeants who was a friend of
Wow.
mine. And yeah, I was held for about 6 hours. Fortunately, my wife and I at the time we had the funds to we were able to secure the funds to come cash bond me out of jail, so I didn't have to sit in jail for overnight.
Yeah.
So they didn't actually take me upstairs and put me in a cell block or anything. They actually they put me in a holding cell and waited for my wife to come and get me out of jail.
Mm.
And then yeah, going home the next day, like I had friends of mine calling me like, "Dude, what the heck's going on?" Because they'd heard it on the news and saw it on the newspaper. The newspaper, local newspaper, ran it on page 2 of the newspaper. It was really a bizarre
Yeah.
instance. I couldn't believe it. It was like being in the twilight zone. I'm like, this can't be happening. I'm like, someone please wake me up and tell me this is a bad dream.
Yeah. Do you think in hindsight the media attention kind of benefited the investigation because more people was aware and got involved with it, or do you think it ultimately hindered it?
Well, it kind of did both. It made them actually do an investigation. That's the thing, because up to that point, they didn't even really do an investigation. From what we found out, they when I hired a real lawyer, I say real lawyer because the lawyer that the union was trying to saddle me with, he did not have my best interest in heart. It was clear from the get go. He was already setting me up to take some kind of a plea arrangement. I said that's not going to happen.
Mm.
When I hired a lawyer on my own, the detectives for that did more investigating the week after I hired that lawyer than they had in the past 4 months. So in a way, the media coverage, yeah, it forced them to actually do an investigation. And then, but it also did hinder it because they were trying to drag it out to force me into taking a deal at the same time. But
Wow.
fortunately, the military stood shoulder to shoulder with me. And, that these detectives went to my command. They threatened members of my full time staff that they would take them to jail for interfering if they didn't cooperate. And they're like, yeah, that's not going to happen. Good luck.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, it was a mess. The state attorney even gave them another couple months to try and come up with something, and he couldn't. He ended up not even charging me. Like I was never even officially charged with a crime. From what my lawyer said, he didn't even do the paperwork for it because he just knew from
Wow.
the very beginning it was a complete botch job.
Yeah. And I think they
So,
tried to keep it quiet and give you a deal off the record because of some upcoming election, was it? At the time?
yeah, after the criminal case was dropped, they turned it over to internal affairs and tried to basically state I did something wrong administratively to try and save face.
Ah,
The
okay,
first
yeah.
thing my lawyer did when that happened is he sent the entire case file to the city manager and explained the situation. A few weeks later, we got a letter back from the city administrator saying I'd broken no rules, violated no policies, I'd done nothing wrong. So even then, they still tried to sustain some kind of administrative, and then they tried to say I violated some kind of administrative rule. And the union president, this is a guy who I talked to early on in this whole thing, who had told me in detail, like, yeah, you did nothing wrong. You're good. I'll back you up on this 100%. He called me because they had called him, the detectives had called him asking him to encourage me to take a deal. And I said, why all of a sudden do I have to take a deal when you told me I did nothing wrong?
Mhm.
And he flat out said, listen, I'm going to level with you. The sheriff's election's coming up and they really don't want this hanging over their heads. And I said, that's not my problem. I
Yeah.
said, if they don't want this hanging over their heads, they need to just drop it and let it go so the new sheriff doesn't have to deal with it. But they didn't do that.
Wow.
The scary thing is the
No.
sheriff that was over this whole thing to begin with is a congressman now.
Wow, okay, okay.
Mhm.
So he didn't want any kind of dirt, did he?
Yeah, from what
Almost.
I understand too, he hasn't really had to answer for any of this. I don't know if anyone's ever gone to him on an informal level to ask him about it, but yeah, yeah, but yeah, they wanted to try and cover it up. They wanted to get it out of the way because they didn't want the new sheriff to deal with it, and they didn't want the outgoing sheriff who was running for office to have to deal with it.
And it would also question any previous cases like yourself, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Put the
Because,
spotlight on
like I
them.
said, they've done this to people and gotten away with it before, from what I was told. That's what I mean. How this whole thing has been kept so quiet, I don't know. But
Mm.
yeah, they've done a really good job at trying to keep it nailed shut. I'll say that. But from what I've understood, they've made massive policy revisions to how they can do these kind of investigations. So
Yeah.
the detectives just can't freely go and get an arrest warrant for somebody without actually running it through their chain of command and making sure all their ducks are in line.
Oh, yeah, okay. And a shame to the media as well for being so
Mhm.
quick to judge you, but not coming out with a follow-up report when you were cleared, which we
Mhm.
see time and time again, don't we?
Yep.
And that's, I think, why you're doing these podcasts, isn't it? To raise awareness and
Yep. I mean,
highlight
that's the
this
only way I can
situation.
really do it. And like you said, that's the thing. It's like not only did I want my name cleared, but after doing more and more of them, that's the thing. I want to raise awareness to this because I'm sure if this has happened to me, it can happen to somebody else. So getting my story out and letting anyone who knows might be in this position, they don't have to be a victim if they don't deserve to be. If their agency is trying to, rake them over the coals for just doing their duty that they committed to doing, they don't have to just take it. They can fight back, and they
Yeah.
should fight back. And there's a lot of resources out there that can help them fight back.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So with your case, is it a case of like federal versus state at one point because you're federally bound to serve your time and attend these, various
Well,
events in
that's the
terms of
thing.
the military?
Ultimately, that's the thing. My orders are what ultimately kept me from being prosecuted or punished for this because they knew, like, yeah, they can't. The state attorney's like, he's got orders. I can't touch this guy. He's got orders to back up. And because if he had prosecuted me, then it could have been, the federal government could have come after him,
Yeah.
the prosecutor's office for malicious prosecution. So, yeah, that's what I mean. The whole thing just turned into a big damage control campaign after the whole thing. It was like they basically dropped a huge bomb and we're running around trying to pick the pieces up.
Yeah. And the
You know,
effects
and
on your own personal life and work life, I bet I can almost bet that you haven't been compensated for that, have you?
nope.
No.
Like I said, I did not come out ahead financially on this. I mean, the settlement we got was not a huge amount. And then the sad part is at the very end, when it got to the point where my lawyers were deposing the detectives who made the false arrest, their defense was they basically played dumb. They're like, "Oh, we thought we did our job," and even though it was
Mm,
clear they didn't, there was like it was all circumstantial to say that you know. Unfortunately, like the whole thing would have had to boil down. We had to prove that they intended to harm me somehow, and by them playing dumb, they
yeah.
basically, it's pretty sad that they had to basically admit they were stupid, which they
Mm,
weren't. I don't think they were. I think they knew exactly what they were doing, but that was their only defense was to play dumb, that they didn't know how to do their jobs properly, which doesn't say much for them.
yeah. And although you were cleared, I think the effects are still having an effect to this day, aren't they? Especially in terms of your military reservist work and stuff that you do. And I think you're a private contractor as well, are you?
Yes.
Yep. So you're
Yeah,
under
that
this
that does
continuous evaluation where you're regularly
correct. Yeah,
checked
and
and
I'm
asked the
always
same
under
thing.
continuous for my security clearance. So yeah, occasionally I do get asked about this, especially if I change jobs. I have people pull me aside and ask me to, tell them a little more about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, that people go back and they do their research and they find, yeah, this guy didn't do anything wrong. A lot of people have come back and they're like, wow, like this is crazy. Like, how did you deal with this?
Yeah.
So I've gotten some pats on the back over it too.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is just something nobody should ever have happen to them, in my opinion. This is something that should have been so easily resolved and dealt with. It's just really sad there's people in this world that are willing to step all over somebody else to try and make themselves look good because that's all this really boiled down to.
Yeah. So how long from you being arrested to being cleared? Was it a lengthy process?
It criminally cleared, it was about 2 months, I think.
Okay.
Like I said, the state attorney gave them another couple months to do their diligence and try and find something, which there was nothing to find, so they weren't able to, in spite of their threats towards my military command and their attempted coercion and stuff, they were not able to generate any more false
Yeah.
false narrative. So that was cleared, but then the internal affairs detectives, they drug it out for about another year after that at least.
Wow.
And they did that
Okay.
on purpose, to just try and keep me in the mud, so to speak. The detective they used, went through some really, um, underhanded stuff. Like anything I was ever accused of doing, this guy did way worse just to try and, find something on me. The sad thing is the detective they used, was also in the military, in the reserves. I believe he was,
Wow.
Air National Guard. At first, when I found this out, I was a little bit like, okay, finally, I got someone who does what I do. Maybe they'll get it.
Yeah.
No, this guy was just like the other detectives. He was just trying to get another little bronze star on his chart. And I found out during this investigation, members of my command were telling me, my first sergeant and whatnot were telling me, yeah, this guy, let me give you an example of what he's doing. Like, he wasn't going around knocking on doors saying, hi, I'm Detective so and so with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. I need to talk to you about one of your soldiers. He was knocking on doors saying, I'm Special Agent so and so with Air Force OSI, which he did on the guard side, and basically falsely trying to implicate that he was conducting an investigation for the military, which was not happening. And
Yeah.
members of my command were calling him out on this. They're like, you do realize we're an intelligence unit. We're not a bunch of dumb infantry hicks here. We know what you're doing is wrong and we're going to tell on you.
Yep.
And yeah, he went all the way up to my brigade level doing this. And from my understanding, ended up losing his special position he had in the Air Force. And what prompted this guy to do that, I have no idea. But he also knew I had lawyers, and every time like he wanted to talk to me, he would call me directly, and I flat out told him like, "Look, I have a lawyer, and I'm not going to acknowledge any of your calls or correspondence. You need to talk to my lawyers." But
Yep.
he, and then finally, um, before when this whole thing started, I was about to leave town for 4 months to go do a training assignment. The following year, I was finally able to go do that, and it was when they were coming to the conclusion of the internal affairs investigation. He found out I was out on this training assignment and actually called the schoolhouse of where I was being trained just to tell them that I had an arrest on my record and that should be looked into. It had nothing to do with his investigation, but like just to try and get me thrown out of my training environment.
Wow.
I couldn't
Sabotage.
believe it. I'm like,
Mm.
what is with, and like my lawyer's like, what did you do to this guy? I said, I don't know. I've never met this guy, but apparently, I was training to get into a position that he couldn't get into at some point, and that maybe had
Oh,
something to do with it. But
the plot thickens.
yeah, this guy, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, I didn't, and then, even after all that, we had a meeting with the undersheriff, the second guy in command of the whole, sheriff's department. This is the guy we spoke of before we started the recording. He, even after he called us into, we basically elected to have a civil service hearing because they were still trying to sustain allegations against me, even after all this. And,
Oh,
my lawyer had gone around and deposed members of my command and gotten sworn statements that yes, the detective falsely identified himself. He was falsely making claims of what he was investigating, which tainted the whole investigation. Even after that, um, my lawyers and I went to see the undersheriff at his request to quote unquote potentially resolve the situation, which basically involved him sitting behind his desk trying to bully me into taking a deal. And even after my lawyers told him, like, look, we have documented evidence of your detectives falsely identifying themselves, breaking the law, breaking your protocol, and he still would not drop it. So we opted to have a civil service hearing to put this whole thing to bed once and for all. And that's when the harassment campaign ensued. He started sending people to my house. My wife was being followed a couple times. There was one particular day I wasn't available. I don't think I was home, but somebody came to my house in an unmarked police car wearing a JSO polo shirt and was kicking on my front door. My wife was scared enough to arm herself with one of our handguns we kept in the house. And one of my neighbors came out and saw the guy kicking on my door and started taking pictures of his car and taking pictures of him. And when that happened, the guy conveniently left the scene.
mm.
But yeah, it boiled up to like literally the 11th hour. We were about to have the civil service hearing, and they called my lawyer and said, "Okay, we'll drop everything. We'll give him all of his back pay from this period if he'll just walk away."
Wow.
So yeah,
So, as an outsider looking in, I'd sort of theorized that He was told to try and make the problem, being you, go away and find any dirt on you possible
Pretty
to
much.
paint them in a good light, which is criminal, isn't it? I mean, these are the people that are supposed to protect, serve the public, and especially somebody like yourself who does nothing but serve his country over
Yeah,
20
and I'd have
years.
no problem too. This undersheriff, I have no problem. His name was Pat Ivy. I have no problem dropping his name in this because,
Yeah.
quite frankly, he lost all respect when he did all that. I mean, he just, going that low as a public service, someone who's in that position, abusing their authority. I have no respect for people like that.
Yeah.
And my lawyer made it a point, like, yeah, we're not having any more meetings with this guy because, like, he even said, out of all this thing, he's probably the one that treated me the most unfairly through this whole thing.
Yeah.
It's just really sad. I actually thought, like, when it got to that point, I actually thought this guy, being the undersheriff, would actually be willing to, possibly even privately admit there was wrongdoing and that mistakes were made, but he just would not. He would not back down. He wanted to, hold that ego, hold that line for his detectives, and they're all good old boys, and he didn't want to make them look bad, even in an off the record situation.
Yeah. Makes you wonder why that wasn't fully investigated and stuff. Some cover up
Yeah, I
there.
don't know. I mean, the military is fully aware of it, and I don't know if the military just felt that I'd gotten my just deserved. I was cleared, and because they like I said, nothing bad happened to me in this whole thing, other than I was never convicted of anything. I was never punished, even administratively. The military backed me up 100%. So maybe they felt that was enough. But yeah,
Yeah.
there just didn't seem to be any interest, unfortunately. I think everyone just kind of wanted it to go away after it having gone on that long.
So
No one really wanted to deal with it.
while you was under investigation, was you not able to serve in the military?
No, I was.
Oh, you was.
I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another interesting thing too. The sheriff's department, even with this still going on, with the criminal charges still pending, mind you, they came in to do an investigation on my security clearance because my clearance, of course, got flagged. So the powers that be came in and they looked at this and they even said to my first sergeant, "Is this some kind of a joke?" Like even they thought it was a joke, and
Yeah.
gave me my clearance back before I was even cleared of the criminal charges. Like that's how little merit this whole thing had, and that's what really made JSO mad too, because that pretty much just killed, any steam they had in this when the military was willing to back me up to that level. But yeah, my
Yeah.
military unit actually gave me extra duty days. They were, they let me go on the training assignments, like I said, with all this still going on. And so yeah, the army came to my back 100%.
Yeah. So if it wasn't for having such loyal colleagues within the military and stuff who had your back, then this could have gone way worse, couldn't it?
Oh
You could
yes.
have probably landed yourself in jail innocently.
Hmm. Well, that's what their objective was. They wanted me to be in jail. And the sad thing was, like, they trumped this up. I think their objective was, like I said, they're so used to playing the odds and doing this and getting away with it, and people just taking deals. Like they
Yeah.
were already willing. Oh, we'll boil it down from a felony to a misdemeanor. And then it got to the point where they even made an offer to my lawyer because they knew we were going to sue them. They made an offer to drop everything if we just simply agreed not to sue them. So like
Mhm.
they
Yeah.
knew they'd stepped in it pretty bad, and you know the sad thing is too, like, my lawsuit settlement wasn't that much, but just from the civil service part of this or the civil lawsuit part of this, they probably spent over $250,000 just in lawyer fees to the city attorneys. That's not including the criminal case, the administrative case, all the man hours. Like this was probably $1 million endeavor for that sheriff's office that the
Wow.
taxpayers had to pay for.
Money that could have been spent elsewhere, couldn't it?
Hmm.
Yeah. Makes you wonder what's really going on behind the curtain sometimes, these organizations.
It's sad, and it's like it's like it makes me wonder how many people are in prison or in jail for doing nothing wrong. Like that these detectives have
Yeah.
falsely arrested, when they were actually working in the mainstream, of because one of the detectives that arrested me, I remember I asked him how long he'd been doing this, and he said he was a homicide detective for 20 years. And all of a
Wow.
sudden he's not a homicide detective and he's doing this. Like how bad of a mistake did he have to make to get demoted from being a homicide detective to being an
Yeah.
integrity detective where he has to go after his own people? Like,
Yeah, of
how
course.
many people like did he like try to fabricate murder charges on to put them in prison?
Yeah. Does make you wonder.
It's
And I've been,
really sad. It's really sad to think what these people have done. I'm lucky. because I at least had the means to fight my way through this and beat it. But I'm
Mm,
sure there's people that didn't, and they're probably having to reap much more negative repercussions than I am.
absolutely. I've seen multiple cases with this, and I've been trying to learn bits about US law and how it all works with the court system. And you see that when people are offered a deal, like say somebody's looking at maybe 10 years, and then they say, oh, well, if you admit to it, we'll give you 5 years. But if you dare to question the system and take it to trial, you're going to get the full time or possibly even double that time for questioning us. And I think that makes a lot of people just kind of roll over and take it, doesn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately, that does happen. It's I mean, like I said, working in corrections, I mean, there are a lot of people in jail that are guilty.
Yeah.
They've they did their crimes and they're doing their time or they're going to do their time. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people in jail that might be and probably are innocent at the same
Yeah.
time. There's a lot of, like, because when you get charged with a capital case over here, like if it's murder or some kind of high level sex crime against children, that, those are what called capital offenses. And when you get put in jail for those, there's no bond. Like you can't get out of jail, even if you have the money to bail yourself out. They will usually hold you until your trial, and that can take years.
Hmm.
There was a guy I saw that was in jail for capital sexual battery. One of his younger female relatives fabricated stuff, and he ended up getting cleared, but it took 4 years. He sat in
Wow.
jail for 4 years waiting on it to get cleared. And I mean, he lost his career. He had a good job. It's the same thing. But yeah, it's sad to think, of not just, the people, not the general public, but people that were in my position that, were making an effort to actually do something for the community are in jail because their own colleagues wanted to use them as a career stepping stone.
Yeah, that's awful. Really
It's
is
it's really
awful.
terrible to think about. It really is. And it's just one of those things. It's like, I've had people tell me, "Oh, you should put this behind you." I'm like, "Okay, there is no way I could ever put this behind me." This went on for 8 years. It went on
Yeah.
for a quarter of my life at the time. It's like that's 25% of my life up to the point where we finally got it resolved. It's like that's something I'm never going to be able to forget.
Yeah.
So
How,
I
how
mean,
did how did your family take it when all this was going on? Like,
well, they were shocked too. Like I said, my family was very supportive. My mother was offering to help me out. You know, uh, it put a lot of strain on my marriage between my ex-wife and I. I don't think it was ultimately why she's my ex-wife, but it did have
yeah.
its negative effects. But yeah, it was a bizarre thing for everybody. Just nobody could believe it. It was like because people didn't before this, I'd never get in trouble. I made it a point to stay out of trouble and live a good life. Up to this point, I'd had like one speeding ticket my entire life.
Yeah.
And even my lawyer's like, yeah, you have like one of the cleanest backgrounds for anybody we've ever seen, even someone who does work in law enforcement. You like have nothing on your record.
Mm,
So it was just a real seeing the other side of that polar ice cap with the, having a felony charge dumped on me. It was just really
yeah.
unbelievable for everybody. Like no one could believe it.
So, have you not been back to working in corrections since this?
No.
No. No.
No, after
Understandable.
after the administrative part, I resigned once that was part of the conclusion. I basically once I saw it through to the end and cleared my name on that side, I resigned. Um I was deployed to Afghanistan in 2016, which was about a year after this whole thing ended. And coming when I got back from that, I did some work in some other areas for a little while. But in 2019, I got offered a position doing the private contracting work.
Oh,
And I've been doing that ever since. And quite frankly, at this point in my life, I have no desire. I've been offered jobs in corrections again, both with local departments and on the federal level, even. But it's just a line of work I really don't want to go back into any again. Not after what I'm doing now. I mean, I work Monday through
yeah.
Friday. I have holidays off. I have weekends off. I work in a nice climate controlled office with a lot
Oh,
of
wow.
like minded people who have worked in my line of work as far as the military goes. And it's just a much more comfortable environment. And
Yeah.
I quite frankly have no desire at this point in my life, being as old as I am, going back into that line of work.
Yeah. So, when you say private contractor, I just get the image that you're kind of doing like private security stuff over in the Middle East or some kind of conflict zone? Is that not the case really? Or
No, no, I work here on the state side. I have been
okay,
offered jobs over in those countries in Iraq and Kuwait and stuff like that. But I've done 2 deployments with the military since this too. I've been to Afghanistan and Djibouti in Africa,
wow,
and yeah, I honestly, quite frankly, I'm happy just doing the line of work I'm doing. But no, I work up in the near the capital in DC.
cool,
So for one of the federal agencies, and I do a lot of just analytical type work
cool.
for the government, punching, creating documents and stuff, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So your career in the military has kind of progressed, hasn't it? And since all this
It has. I
stuff,
am looking forward to hopefully retiring from the military in the near future. Like you said, I've got almost 22 years in. After this last deployment, I got injured over in Africa as well. So I'm
wow,
hoping that, yeah, I'm hoping that maybe once all the my injury claims get filed and I can get the proper treatment and care I need for that, I'm hoping I'll be able to possibly pursue retirement from the military. But if not, I still plan on pursuing my career
yeah,
as best as I can until I am able to retire.
yeah.
But
When you have
yeah, it's been a great.
retired,
I'm sorry.
so I'm just going to say, when you have retired, you should come back on the podcast and give us some stories of your time in the military and conflicts and stuff. Because I'm
Yeah.
sure you can't talk too much about it, still being in that line of work, maybe.
Nah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things obviously anyone in the military can't talk about
Yeah,
when it comes to their duties and stuff. But yeah, there are things I can talk about. And we can make that another segment for sure. But yeah, it's like I said, this is my I'm been in the military for 22 years almost. This is my fourth position I've had in the military, and it's the one I've done the longest. And being in the intelligence field, it's been great because it gives me a chance. It's challenging. It gives me an opportunity to use my expertise from previous jobs, including my experience in corrections, even to help make help promote our efforts in
yeah,
what I do now. So
and ultimately making the country safe as well.
yep, that's yeah, no matter how minor, everyone's role in the military plays some kind of role, and our ultimate goal of safety and security of our country and those we support. So
Yeah,
but yeah, it's like, it's like, you go over on a deployment, you spend in Afghanistan. I spent 9 months
wow,
doing, a lot of different things, and a lot of it seemed tedious and menial. But, at the end of the deployment, if you just get like one little email that says what you did on this day made a difference, that's like,
yeah, of
that
course,
that can make the whole deployment worth it, knowing you did something to positively affect things. So,
yeah,
that's what it's all about. But like I said, I've got friends in other branches. I've worked with people in other branches. We all, we talk about the differences in our jobs by land, by air, by sea, or whatever. But bottom line is we're all fighting the same war. We're all fighting for the same mission, in my opinion. It doesn't matter what you're doing or how you're doing it.
yeah, absolutely, definitely. So, have you wrote any books on this? What happened to you or anything?
Not yet, and I've been
Okay.
encouraged to because my grandfather was an author. My mother's an author, so everyone's kind of looking at me. It's your turn.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have been encouraged actually to possibly consider doing that. I may do that at some point. If
Yeah.
I do end up retiring from the military, that may be something I do once I retire from that side of my career.
Yeah.
Because my grandfather's book talked about his experiences in the military and his experiences in his personal life as well, growing up in the Great Depression, and living,
Yeah.
his pre-war, his war times, his post-war time, having children, that being my mom and my aunts.
Yeah.
It took, the book covered a span of his life up to the mid 90s, I think it was, when he was in
Wow.
his 80s. So yeah, I've definitely thought about writing a book. I'm working on my second college degree right now too. So once that's done too, I might be able to I might consider
Yeah.
writing, talking to some publishers, and talking to my mother, some other people I know who have written books. My
Yeah.
mother's a very smart lady. She's a PhD, retired psychologist,
Oh wow.
And she's already given me some good insights on how I could write my book or at least a memoir and have something published about this whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. 'Cause I think it would reach a wider audience because I know there's a lot of people who read books, or listen to books, audio books, and the
Hmm.
podcasts are also quite popular too. But I think they're
Yep,
within their own niche, aren't they? So I think someday if you do put it into some sort of book and publicize it, it will ultimately help even further to spread awareness to what you went through and also your experience within the military, which people always find fascinating, including myself.
definitely. Because yeah, I mean, I'm not. I never try to pretend to be something I'm not. I'm not one of those gung ho Green Beret guys. But like again, we all have different jobs in the military. We all did different things. I've been, like I said, coming back from my deployments. I'm lucky. I came home without being shot, without being blown up. At least not directly. We did have some instances where we did have explosives hit
Oh,
within, close, but it's like, I know, there's guys that came back, some paid the ultimate sacrifice. They didn't come home. So I
yeah.
still consider myself very lucky as that, I'm sitting here today after have been in two deployments and been in the military for 22 years and working in corrections for 7 years. That's a dangerous job too. And
Yeah.
that I'm able to sit here and talk about this with you. I feel very blessed, and my heart goes out to those who weren't as lucky as me, and they have all my colleagues who aren't in the same position. My hats off to them
Yeah.
because they obviously had it way worse than I did.
Yeah. And I'm sure you have some stories you can document in the future about your time in corrections.
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot I could talk about.
Yeah.
So but yeah, I'm just glad, like I said, I've been able to talk about this, and um I've had individuals like you that are willing to take the time to speak with me and give me the opportunity to get the truth of the matter out about the whole thing, not just what they're going to see on the mainstream media that was not true.
Yeah. Well, I think it is working. You're doing these podcasts and shows and stuff because when I've searched for your name and the keywords like arrested or jailed, you find that more of your shows are coming to the top of the search and the actual truth of the matter of what happened. So fair play to you for pushing forward and
That's
helping to
good.
spread awareness.
Yeah,
Definitely.
because like I said, I love what I do. Both military, my job in the military and what I do on the civilian side is very similar. I love what I do and I want to keep doing it. So, I'm very grateful that this kind of stuff does help, keep me, help clear my name. People see this and they know that what I was accused of didn't actually happen. And,
Yeah.
the military standing up for me and helping preserve my security clearance and all that, just so that I can still keep doing this.
Yeah.
So it's been a real blessing to have this job. And like I said, it's a great line of work. I love it. I mean, um, I'm originally from Florida. I miss my home state, but I mean, like I said, unfortunately, where I'm from in Florida, there's not a huge abundance of jobs for what I do.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things I've learned to. Sometimes you have to go out of your comfort zone to succeed a little bit. And me coming to where I am now, having to live in a different environment, um, it's been mildly inconvenient in some areas, but it's greatly been beneficial in others. To where
Yeah.
I've progressively, I'm working on a second college degree. I've financially it's been great. The money I get compensated for my job is way more than I ever made and would have ever made in corrections. It's had its benefits. So it's nice to get up, make and go out and make a good living and doing what you like to do.
You've really made good of a bad situation then. Definitely.
I've tried my best. Yes, it's
And they
I've
say
always
the best form of revenge is success. So all those people out there who had the evil eye for you and wanted to ultimately destroy you can now look back at this and think, oh,
yeah.
he's
Well,
doing
it's so
better than he
funny.
was.
Yeah, it's so funny because it's like every time something bad happened to me that in this, it's like I came out looking out, ultimately looking better than I did when I went in. And one of my platoon sergeants in the army, and like one time when something happened and I came out the other end, um, I pardon my language on this, but he said, "You're like the best smelling piece of shit that ever walked the earth." It's like you're constantly getting like horse manure dumped on you, and you just get up, you dust yourself off, and you've grown another foot. It's like you just
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
going. So yeah, it's definitely that's one thing about the military. You learn to be resilient. You learn how to just drive through things and not give up. And that's one of the greatest traits I think. Being in the military gave me the energy and the courage to get through this without giving up and just not throwing in the towel and not letting all the weight they put on me wear me down. I was able to shed the weight, and now I'm able to run again.
Yeah, and you're also probably inspiring a lot of people out there who have
I
come
hope
into
so.
similar situations.
I honestly hope so. Like I said before, I really honestly hope that this particular instance, if it was horrible for me, but I'm hoping that if anyone else ever has to go through this, they maybe will watch one of my interviews or research my case or something, and they'll know they can fight back. Like there's nothing wrong with fighting back. Just
Yeah,
because a big organization like a sheriff's office tries to ruin your life, you don't have to let them. There are, especially if it's a military based thing, there are resources in the military. Even if your immediate command won't help you, there are resources in the military that will help you weather this kind of activity.
and your case
So,
has really shown that, definitely.
yep. And
Yeah,
I'm glad. Like I said, I'm just really glad. And I hope, even if this just helps one person, if one
yeah.
person can avoid having this happen to them, and it can save their career, save their life, or save their family and their livelihood. To me, that's all worth it.
And I'm sure you're very grateful to those who did stand by you.
I am. I
Definitely.
am extremely grateful, and every time I talk to them, I let them know that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So, if anyone wanted to reach out to you or ask any questions, would there be anywhere for them to go, or are they best to deal with maybe like your PR team or something?
Well, yeah, they can reach out through them, but I also have a website. It's ian.murray.net. I haven't created a community Facebook page or anything yet. I have my own Facebook page, but I don't give that out just because I don't want a bunch of people I don't know blowing up my
Yeah,
Facebook. I like to keep that one for friends and family.
of course.
Um, but yeah, they can go. Yeah, but like I said, the website, or yeah, you have the information of my public relations person. He can
Yeah,
definitely reach out. He's had other people. He has had some emails sent to him from people who have seen the podcast and forwarded them on to me. So I'll get them if they're sent to him.
awesome. Yeah, and if anyone's watching or listening to this, then please get in touch with me, and I will forward them to the person I was dealing with to get you on. Definitely.
I appreciate that, sir.
Yeah, no problem. You're more than welcome. I'm just sorry that you had to go through such time, and I'm glad that
Yeah,
you've got to the other side of it.
yeah. I'm very, like I said, I'm very grateful. I'm glad God gave me the courage and the intelligence to deal with this, and I'm just glad that I had the people in my life I needed to help me weather through it. And again, no one should ever have to go through something like this for doing nothing wrong. It's terrible, but unfortunately, corruption is just a part of the world we live in, and you can let it beat you or you can fight back. But
Yeah,
my advice would be, if you know you're in the right, don't give up. Fight back as much as you can, as hard as you can. It's worth it in the end. A lot of people would
absolutely.
feel that it wouldn't be worth it. I'm telling you from personal experience, even though it took several years of my life, it was worth it, fighting it to the bitter end, and coming out on the top.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also encourage people to go and watch your previous podcast on Inside Crime. Matthew
Yep.
Cox, you were in the studio there. It was quite
Yep,
cool.
on that website I told you, they're all on that website I mentioned, ian.murray.net, I believe is the website. They're
Okay.
all my publicist team uploads all my interviews to that website. So if anyone wants to watch them, or as you mentioned, there was one, it's on YouTube, Mr. Cox. That one's a very good one as well. There's lots of them out there though. I actually went and I hadn't even looked at them all until recently. I actually went and looked at my researched myself, and I was like, oh wow. So it's nice to
Wow.
see they're getting out there and people are watching them.
Is that the only one you've done in studio? Have the rest been kind of remote interviews? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, most of them. The one with Mr. Cox actually worked out nicely because I was down in Florida visiting my mom, and we were having a Christmas up in the Northeast Florida area near Jacksonville.
Oh,
And I was actually picking my mom up from Tampa to bring her up to Jacksonville, and we were traveling through the area where Mr. Cox lives, so we were able to actually stop in and do his in person. But yeah, if memory
wow.
serves me correctly, all of them have been in person. I've been invited to do some other ones in person. The problem is they're like in other cities. They're in like New York City or Los Angeles, and I just unfortunately can't really take the time off or have the means, the just extra money to,
Yeah, of
fly out
course.
to California and stay in a hotel for several days and, I mean, it'd be fun, but,
Yeah,
unfortunately I just don't have the time to do it. I wish I did.
yeah.
If things change, that might change here in the next couple, years if I keep doing these, but, otherwise, yeah, they've all been remote like this.
Well, if you ever find yourself in the United Kingdom, you're more than welcome
Mhm.
to come to the studio, and we'll do this again
Yeah,
in
please.
person.
Yeah, I actually, like I mentioned, I have family in Scotland, so, if I ever get out there to visit them, I might take you up on that. So, yeah, please make sure that, you email me all your contact info. Because if I get out
Absolutely.
there and, to England, yeah, my family's been bugging me like crazy to come back to Scotland and visit for a while. So, if my retirement goes through and I get some time off, that might be a trip I plan on making.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So Scotland's a beautiful place, as I'm
It
sure you're
really
aware.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad took us there in 2007 for Christmas. We had a great time. My brother and I side tripped to, London, and we went to Amsterdam for a few days. It was a lot of fun. We had a great time.
Wow.
Very pretty places.
Yeah, I can imagine. Definitely. I've got somebody from the States who reached out on the guest platform. Initially was going to do a remote interview, and then he found out he's running a marathon down in London next April. So he's actually coming up to the studio. So that's going to be kind of fun. 5,000 miles away to have them in the studio. So
Yeah,
that's good.
like I said, if I could get out there, I might take you up on that. But you said you're near Manchester?
Yeah, the northwest of England. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I served with some guys. Some of the guys I served with were from, that area, and I also, I have a friend that I met. He came to my hometown. He's a submariner in the Royal Navy,
Oh,
and,
wow.
he came there's a big submarine base near where I'm from in Florida, and they send a lot of people from other countries there to do joint training, for sub school and stuff. So he comes over every couple years to, Florida, and he's from your neck of the woods. He's from Manchester, so,
Oh, wow.
um, yeah,
Are you far from Indiana where you stay? Like a couple of
Indiana?
states over?
Couple states, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in Northern Virginia right now, so
Northern Virginia. Cool. I've got a lot of family out in Indiana, and do plan on getting out there eventually to see them. So
yeah,
if I
Indiana's
do
a
a little
nice state.
tour over the states,
Yeah,
I'll let
it's
you know.
it's America's a big country, and each state's kind of different in its own way. I always tell people from other countries, it's like, yeah, you just have to kind of you almost need like a few weeks to do a cross country road trip when you come to the United States because we're a big country. We have 50 states. We have so many different. We got beach, desert, mountain,
Yeah.
everything, island environments. There's just the United States is kind of has a little bit of everything. So
If I ever find myself out there on a road trip, I'll definitely hit you up and
please do.
give you a shout.
Please
Get
do.
some
Yeah, I'd love to
content.
meet you. Like I said, if I get over there or you get over here, I'd love to meet you in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, man. Thanks for requesting to come on to the show. It's
Thank you for
been an
having me.
absolute pleasure. And you're welcome
Likewise.
back. You'd be welcome back at any time if there's anything you want to get into, or no problem at all. More than welcome,
Awesome.
definitely. So it's your website again, just for people. Is
It's ian.murray.net.
ian.murray.net. Excellent. So, guys, if you're watching this podcast on YouTube, don't forget that the audio version is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. There's just too many platforms to mention. If you're listening to this and you want the video version, head over to my YouTube channel. You'll find that and my other types of content and previous podcast interviews that I've done. That being said, episode 20 with Ian Murray, fascinating story. And again, man, thanks for coming on, and sorry to hear everything you went through. But in hindsight, I think you're in a better position now, aren't you, in life? So
I agree.
kind of
Thank you.
it backfired on the ones that tried to bring you down, didn't it?
One way or another, I believe it probably did.
Yeah, awesome, man. So I'll end the recording here. If you just stick around for a couple of seconds till it's finished uploading from your end, we should be good to go.
Sure.
So yeah, thank you for tuning in and listening, guys. Your support is greatly appreciated, and I'll see you again on the next one.